Hi, this is Donna Burton, CEO and head coach at Dawning Light Pathways. In my last video, I gave a pretty good overview of kind of what I do, but I listened through and I felt like I needed to kind of detail a little bit more specifically the types of sessions that I'm able to facilitate. So I had to pull up my website so I don't forget any, but all of these are located on the website with a clear description of what they are. So generally speaking, Christian life coaching can help you manage just about anything. I can help with relationships. I can help with forgiveness. I can help with setting boundaries. I can help with communication strategies. I can help with preparing for any kind of relationship changes, whether that's, walking into dating after some kind of divorce or getting divorced or remarriage or any of those shifts in life. Life happens. We don't always walk the way God intended. And so there's a lot of areas where we can help each other by just redirecting to what God intends for things to look like. And anytime that you put God at the center, it pulls everything together so you don't have so many problems. It's amazing how our own problems, pretty much all of my problems, are my own doing. And I'm convinced that's the case for all of us, that, we get caught up in our hang-ups and it is what it is, but thankfully, God does not judge that. Thankfully, God recognizes that we are flawed, and thankfully He loves us in spite of all of that. So, on that note, I function the same way. I don't hold anybody's past against them. I don't hold your hang-ups against you. I don't judge where you are, because we all start somewhere. None of us is perfect. None of us will ever be perfect. We all have some kind of struggle that we need help walking through. And that's just a fact of life. And we all have to start somewhere. And so just like God meets you right where you are, I meet you right where you are as well. I do everything that I can to make sure that I'm looking at you as God looks at you. And so, tangent, kind of derailed there. In general, though, it's really just helping you to identify where it is that you're struggling and how we can help you manage better. And so relationships, I talked about that, identity and purpose. And so a lot of the things that we struggle with are because we think that we are one person, when in reality, we are somebody completely different. And until we begin to walk in the identity that God created us as, we're always going to have these conflicting things that arise. And so very often, whenever you're trying to make a decision and you've got like these conflicting sides of what you should be doing, typically it's because you're walking in an identity or in a thought process that is not true in its reality. And so often the lies that we believe, they're waged in here. I mean, they are influenced sometimes by the people that we're around, but for the most part, the things we struggle with, they're our own internal lies that we tell ourselves. And I'll talk more about identity whenever I share more of my testimony, because identity it's a huge piece. But also when you're trying to start something, we tend to have faulty beliefs even. And so if you're, for example, you're trying to start a business. That's what I'm doing right now, right? You might be thinking that maybe you're not qualified yet. Or you might think, well, in the past, these things have happened, and so that's what I'm going to have to deal with this next time. And all of those beliefs, while you might have valid experiences that back them up, that doesn't necessarily make them true. And so we can start tackling those beliefs and really looking at the reality of them and whether or not they're serving you. Real, true beliefs serve us well. And you can tell by the fruits of the Spirit, right? You judge everything by its fruit. And so if your belief is bringing frustration, is bringing anxiety, is bringing hopelessness, those aren't true beliefs. There's something in there that's faulty. And we can take that and start to shift and identify where the Lord's truth is in it so that it can bring you the good things, the love and the joy and the peace and the patience and the kindness and the goodness and faithfulness and gentleness and self-control. I think I got all the fruits of the Spirit in there, but and that's how you're going to know that you're on the right path. Everything that you're doing, you'll start to see these fruits come out of it. And that's kind of our guide for everything. And so I did it in Purpose. Purpose kind of goes along with the career coaching. So I do career guidance. I did work as a career counselor at a college. And so I know how to utilize all the assessments. I'm adept at being able to help kind of give you options. Let's see what you're good at. What other things are out there? What types of things have you not considered? And so some of that takes a little bit of research. Sometimes I do that with you. Sometimes I come back to it a little bit later and say, okay, pause, let's take this up later so I can figure some things out. But for the most part, I've got a pretty decent grasp of what's out there and the different skill sets that tend to fit. And so I've guided people through transitions in careers from, I have a degree in this, but I can't find a job, or I thought I was going to love this and I hate it. And so we find something that's more suited to their skill sets, to the things that they enjoy about work. Sometimes, especially working with parents, what is going to be able to fit into your schedule and how you have to manage home and work together. So those balancing issues as well. And then if you just really don't know, I've worked with a lot of students, especially who are like, I just graduated and I have no idea what I want to do. And so I can assist with that as well. Lots and lots of experience there. What else do I have on here? Parenting support. So whenever I work on parenting, I utilize multisystemic therapy, or MST. I worked for a program that's what we did. Mostly in that program, we worked with at-risk teens, juvenile. So I think age 12 through 18. 12 is close enough to teen. Anyway, basically I work with the parent, I work with you, and help you to identify what it is within your family structure that's just not working, what behaviors there are. And we start to dig into the roots of these behaviors. So we see how all of the things that are happening within our lives fit into a pattern. And then we utilize that pattern to identify what types of behavioral strategies, so like consequences, disciplines, and then encouragement can be built into there. And we help to identify different things to build your relationship. It's not just how do I discipline my child more effectively, so much as how do I really build a relationship with my child so that it moves from just discipline to something more, that understanding that there's love behind this discipline. I've worked with multiple ages and age ranges. I worked with Child Protective Services for a while and assisted with foster families, having to kind of figure out, again, how to build this relationship and then how to manage these behaviors, because especially in children with those kind of traumas, there's so many behaviors to manage. And then there's so much importance on making sure that you're a trustworthy parent for this child. And so I've got a lot of varied experience there. I have children across the board. So my oldest is 15. My 11-year-old is on the autism spectrum. My 10-year-old struggles with ADHD. And then I have a 4-year-old. And so, we've walked through lots and lots of different things. I wish I could say I was perfect. I wish I could say that parenting was like, here's the strategy that everything's going to be fixed. And unfortunately, that's not the case. But just as I've had a lot of experience and people to help pour into me, I have a lot that I can help pour into others as well. So if that's a struggle, please let me see what we can come up with. We can brainstorm together. It doesn't have to be anything complicated. It doesn't have to follow the traditional system even. But we can find something that's going to work within your lifestyle for your family. And that's important. Families are important. And then the other thing that I can help with is healing and trauma. I've done a lot of work with individuals with depression and anxiety, social anxiety, suicidal ideation. That's one that I struggled with. I lost a family member somewhat recently to suicide. And, it's a whole different kind of beast. It's a whole different kind of thing that we walk through there. And it's very, very careful, very cautious in how we approach it. There are sometimes moments where I may have to refer out to somebody who has more expertise in dealing with some of those deeper traumas. But from my perspective, the way that I help manage them is really bringing God into them. So something we like to utilize with that is heart healing. And that's just an opportunity for me to walk you through sitting down in the presence of the Lord. And we allow him to identify where it is in your heart that needs the healing. And sometimes this takes a while. Sometimes it's multifaceted. Sometimes there are injuries to us that, it all funnels together. but we can only address one at a time. And God is very, very good at meeting us right where we need to start. He's very, very good at planting those seeds just to begin getting our minds ready to take on this change and this challenge of what it is that he's trying to heal within us. And so heart healing is really just almost like a prayer session. It's a facilitated prayer session. I sit down with you. We start in prayer. We ask the Lord to bring forward a memory of joy or appreciation. And that just helps us to get a good connection with the Lord. That way we start our moment with appreciation, with thankfulness, with praise of who he is, right? And from there, we allow him to help us identify where it is that we need to begin. And I've been shown areas in my life through heart healing where in some of my most traumatic moments, Jesus showed me where he was. And that it changed how I viewed it. It changed how the moment felt. And now when I think about it, it just looks different. You know, it's there's healing to it. He has shown me moments where I thought that I had forgiven and I hadn't. And so when he revealed where he was in that moment for this other person, it completely changed how I viewed it. And I was able to stop and genuinely pray for this person. And that brought literal physical healing to my neck, which is a whole different story. But it brought closure. And so there's a lot of these moments where just being able to see where Jesus is and then hearing his truth. So when we hand over any of our beliefs, of our doubts, of our worries, of our pain, especially our pain, he always gives us something to replace it with. Sometimes that's peace. Sometimes that's a new answer. Sometimes that's part of our identity. Sometimes that's just a truth of what he says about what the situation was. And it's so powerful just to allow him to say what he wants to say. And he shows up differently for everybody. And so sometimes if you're not familiar with how you hear from the Lord, it might take a little bit of time. We might have to sit in his presence for a little while and keep fleshing out how that might feel, how it might sound. So God speaks in multiple ways. Sometimes people see things. Typically I see and I have emotion along with those visions. And that's me. A lot of people will hear, like actually hear. Some people will have knowing. So it'll just like this idea will just pop into their head and they'll just know whatever it was. Sometimes if emotion, sometimes there's a physical sensation across the body that you'll be able to recognize this is the Lord working in me. And so it's nuanced. It's definitely nuanced, and God shows up differently for everybody. And that's what's so beautiful. I'll have to do a video on all the different ways I've seen Jesus show up, because he's so much more than we can even imagine. But at any rate, all of these things just boil down to the various ideas that, or the various areas in which I can help you with. I'm trained in cognitive behavioral therapy. I'm trained in neuro-linguistic practicing, and I'm trained in multisystemic therapy as well as the heart healing. So all of these pieces fall in different capacities. I don't tend to just follow one. And there's plenty of theories from my counseling degree that I was working through that also play in. It really just depends on the person. It depends on what you've tried. It depends on how you learn. It depends on where you are in your walk. It depends on a lot of factors. And so it's hard for me to just say, oh, it's going to be just like this, because it's not just like this for any single person. It's very much tailored to you. And that's kind of the point. We want this to be a personal experience. We want this to be your journey, your growth, not mine, not the person who created whatever theory we're utilizing or this strategy. It's about you. It's about where you want to be. It's about how you're functioning in life and what's going to be best for you. And all of these things, I don't make that decision. God does. He completely leads where we go. We start every session in prayer. I work very hard to ensure that my mind is silenced, that everything that comes is only directed by him. And there's a lot of checks and balances there. There's a lot of things I do on the back end to make sure that I'm focused on where the Lord is taking us. But that's the difference in Christian coaching versus anything else I've ever experienced, is that God is the one making these decisions. God is the one who's directing all of our change. God is the one pointing out where it is that we need to begin within our healing. and there's no one better to do so. So hopefully that answers some questions. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out, whether you comment on the video, send an email, or call or text me, that's fine. I'm more than willing to answer whatever questions there are, and your questions help me to know how to clarify for others. So please, anything that you're like, well, what about this? Throw it out there. Let me see how I can address it. And if I don't have an answer yet, then I'll have to pray on it and we'll get there. So thank you very much for listening. I hope that this has kind of clarified some of the services that we offer. And yeah, until next time, we'll see you later.